After 6 long months, that's the 1-minute warning before my first race of the 2024-2025 season. This is Inagi Cross. It's in Tokyo along the banks of the Tama River, Tamagawa. So this is actually the second race of the year in the greater Tokyo area. The first one was a couple of weeks ago, I think up in Ibaraki. I didn't make it to that one though, so technically I'm not in the season rankings yet. So I think the 2 rows of people in the starting group in front of me probably did join that race, so that's why they have a better starting position. I was number 14 out of 43, so decent. Last year I did this race and I was right in the back, so starting in the first 3 rows is a whole lot better than that. I remember this race last year being really technical. There's this opening straightaway where people would fight for position, and then there were some really slow technical curves up ahead. So I think a lot of people probably had the same idea, but I really wanted to get as far up as I could before those technical sections. But because everyone else had the same idea, I really didn't make up much ground. Really just preserved my position, I think. So here's where everyone starts jamming on the brakes. Tight turn to the right there, and then coming up ahead here, there's a 90-degree turn to the left. My big worry with these technical sections is that, like the guy back there who got tripped up a little bit, every time that happens, it holds up the people behind, and then there's this accordion effect where the effect is just greater and greater the farther back the line you are. So the people in the front who aren't held up just increase their lead. And it gets harder and harder to chase them down as the race goes on. But still being in the top 15 or so, I figured just keep with the group here as much as possible. Hopefully the lead wouldn't be extended too much, and then maybe in the opportunities that I have, like that long start-finish straightaway, I could hopefully chip away at some more spots. I didn't remember seeing that when it happened. That actually, I think maybe the same spot that happened to me a few times in the pre-ride. Where there was, I think, some loose dirt, and my left foot slipped out there, almost instinctively to try to regain balance. There was a little rain earlier in the week, but it was mostly dried out by today. There are these loose, dry sort of reeds or hay or whatever it was, and then some of the dirt areas were a little loose. And I found that as the race went on, it might have just been because I was getting more and more tired, but I was just finding it harder to keep traction around the corners. I put on some Challenge Baby Limus tires on the front and back wheels. Those are supposed to be pretty good for all terrains. They probably favor wet and mud a little more than drier conditions, but I don't know, I think I might stick with them for a while in a variety of conditions and see how they go. I could probably use more help on the turns and sacrifice a little speed on the straightaways. That's probably where I lose my most time. There are these little straightaways in a couple places in the course. That one back there was really surprisingly bumpy and just really hard to get up the speed to pass someone. Just not quite enough distance to do that. Starting to notice that there was this pack of, I don't know, 5 riders or so that I was at the back of here. Then there was another cluster a little farther ahead of them of another 5 or 6 or so. So I think I was in the top, definitely the top 15, not quite the top 10. I was just hoping that this group didn't get slowed down too much, that we would really lose contact with the first group. I think this is just about where we open up to a little straightaway. Yeah, and we're approaching the 2 barriers here. And this guy fell, and I got a little caught up there. And then I think my handlebar got caught on his wheel or something. But I just noticed my bike was getting pulled behind me as I was trying to run. It took us a couple seconds to get out of it. I guess it didn't slow me down too much, but just couldn't really figure out what was going on. I've been running a lot more this season, mixing a couple days a week into my training. Nothing too intense usually, but you can see even with just that running section, hopping over the barriers and up the stairs, my heart rate is up close to 180. I don't think I really noticed. I wasn't looking at my my bike computer, my head unit at this point that much, but I definitely felt it, and this just wasn't going to be sustainable. I really want to just pick up a couple of more spots and then hopefully be able to cool down a little bit in the technical sections. I guess I picked up maybe a spot or 2 there, but the 2 of us here definitely have a bit of distance behind the next group. I thought I was doing fine with these technical turns through this first lap or 2. I didn't have any big issues, not too much noticeable slipping. So I think the tires are probably a good choice. But unfortunately at this point I just wasn't making up any ground, so I think the people in front of me were just going through at least as fast. Looks like maybe a little faster. I guess we're catching up to these 2 guys just up ahead. I guess my heart rate was slowly coming down in these technical sections too, into 172 or so. So even though this half of the course that was more technical and slow gave a little chance to have the heart rate come down, there were enough of these little surges where you try to pick up a little ground or at least maintain position, where it never really felt like I was getting a really good rest. And then of course these tight turns really require a lot of concentration, so even when your legs are getting a little bit of a rest, it's still sort of mentally exhausting. So you bounce back and forth between physical exertion and mental exhaustion, which really just made it for a overall challenging race. Back to the barriers here. I don't think there were any other issues. I ended up picking up my bike and throwing it over my shoulder for the barriers, and then just keeping it all the way up the steps here. I noticed most other people were just lifting the bike up and then maybe rolling it for 10 meters, 20 meters or so before the steps. I don't know which was really the better choice. Although I guess the first time when it was more crowded and the one guy fell, probably was more dangerous for me to carry the bike on my shoulder. And then I had that issue where I caught my handlebar on someone's bike. So I guess in retrospect I should probably just pick it up. A situation like that. So lesson learned, I guess. Looks like my second lap, if you see the lap counter over to the right, is actually quite a bit faster than the first. I wonder if it's because things got spread out a little bit more, so that there wasn't as much congestion on the tight turns. So even though the opening straightaway after the start was so fast, I think the rest of the course, the first lap ended up being a bit slower. Maybe the second lap was smoother throughout. Definitely remember being pretty exhausted at this point, though. Seeing sort of cross-eyed. My heart rate was only 170 here, but that's just because I didn't have the energy, I think, to really go all out on that sprint on the straightaway. Yeah, I think I kept it under 200 watts on that second little straightaway there. I was definitely trying to find some recovery where I could. I think it was also on this lap where I started to notice my handling getting sketchier and sketchier. I really wasn't coming around turns as cleanly, slipping a little bit more. I guess it's possible that the course was just getting worn down a bit after a couple of laps of 40-45 riders riding through it, but I think it's more likely that I was just so tired at this point that I didn't have as much control as I would have liked. It's like I'm taking some of these corners a little wider, and then the tire's a little jittery when I come out of it on the other end. Oh, I don't know what happened there. It did look like there was a little mound of loose dirt leading into the turn, but even still, I think I was too exhausted to handle it well. Looks like I didn't lose too much time there, but I did land right on my forehead, and I got a little sort of jolt of pain down my neck. So for a minute or so, I thought it might be enough where I'd have to pull out of the race, but it ended up going away, and I felt back to normal. I always find that a fall like that, though, just takes some energy out of me. I think psychologically, just a little hard to get back into it after that. So I could still see people ahead of me, but with all the turns back and forth, it was hard to tell just exactly how far they were. It looked like I was not too far away from some of those people that were just on the screen, but it turns out they were up ahead of this straightaway, and I was still a couple of turns away from it. It's really not a great chance of catching up to any of them. I don't remember there being anyone too close behind me at this point. And again, I couldn't really see up ahead to the next group. And I was tired enough where I was pretty sure I wasn't going to catch much of anyone. So, like a lot of my races last year, it felt like it was just a matter of holding my position and going hard enough to make sure that no one catches me, even if I wasn't going to pick up any more positions. So getting to the end of the third lap here, so I'll have to go over these barriers, and so my time now is already the same as my finishing time of the second lap, and still have to run up those stairs and down and around that little slope there. So this is definitely a slower lap, even if you factor in the fall that I had. That didn't take out more than 5 seconds or so, I don't think. And I'm already a good 30 seconds slower than the last lap. And this is really the last straightaway before the finish. It's a short, narrow straightaway in this little chicane sort of U-turn back to the finish line right there. So the bells are ringing for the final lap, the 4-lap race. So the leaders are probably under 6 minutes a lap. So it's only 24 minutes or so for the full race. So less than 25 minutes really doesn't sound like much of anything, but I think my heart rate averaged close to 175 beats per minute. So that's pretty intense, 25 minutes. I don't think I've found the best way to train for it. I go through a plan with a lot of repeated efforts, but it's hard to practice getting the heart rate up that high for, sustained 20-25 minutes or so. Aside from just racing like this, I think the next best thing I've found are the shorter Zwift races online, where it's often just a pretty hard effort for up to about 30 minutes. The turns are getting pretty sloppy. The riding into the edge, the brushes on the edge there. Hiding in the brush there. It looks like the place where I fell the first time around, and I almost slipped out again. Looking back, I definitely think there was a mound of loose dirt. It must have been giving me some trouble on my front wheel. Actually, I'm pretty sure that that's the same place where a guy in front of me slipped out earlier in the race, and that I had some trouble on during the free-ride. So I guess it probably was the course condition, just made worse by my being so tired. I didn't notice anyone else fall during the race. There are a couple places where people got stuck a little bit and had to unclip and then reset themselves, but no real wipeouts that I saw. A little spike of power there, up to 700 or 800 watts. I think I saw the guy on the mountain bike starting to get a little closer and realized that I'd have to put in a little more effort to keep my positioning. Sloppy turns though. So I guess that must have been the guy that was coming up behind me. Not the one on the mountain bike yet. Not enough to hold this guy off, though. He had a little lower starting number, 34. So it's about 20 spots behind me that he made up. Still holding out hope here that I could catch back up to the guy who was to me there in yellow. But looks like not much room left to do that. And there comes the guy on the mountain bike. Yeah, my heart rate was up over 182 at this point, and I just had nothing left in the tank, so slowed down to a light jog coming up the stairs. Just leisurely hopped back on the bike here. I didn't see anyone behind me, so I knew that I could just slowly roll into the finish line. Looks like the time is comparable to the first lap, especially with my slowing down at the end there. Not as slow as the third lap, but much slower than the second lap. So I think I finished 12th overall, which is a couple of spots better than where I started at 14th. It was a little disappointing overall. I didn't really know where my fitness was going to be coming to this first race. I was really hoping it would be better. Last year I made up a lot of ground starting at the back and finished in the top, I don't know, maybe similar, top 12 or so. So I was hoping that I could get into the top 5 today, or maybe even a top 3 spot that would get me up to the next category. But I'm just obviously not there yet. Got a bit more work to do, and it might be a grinding season of ME4 again. Maybe if luck falls my way, I might finally get a chance at the top. But in any case, it was a tough but fun ride, and looking forward to the next one.